Hello, hello. Welcome to the Mother Days podcast. I am your host, Sarah Wright Olson.
And I'm Teresa Palmer. Hello. Hi, daisies.
Hi, daisies. We are coming at you today with an amazing guest. Perfect timing for this guest because we are both deep in pregnancy here. And I know we have a lot of listeners who are also, you know, what's so crazy is that I keep running into people who have my same due date. Literally, this girl at my son's school, she comes up to me and she is like, oh my gosh, when are you due? And she told me when she was due. I was like, that's my same due date. And then today at the coffee shop, I ran into a girl, exact same due date. Like, I feel like that doesn't happen very often.
I think I met someone with your due date yesterday.
Really?
I was like, wait, I think that's my friend Sarah's due date. Yeah, this girl I was sitting next to at an event in Sydney. I was like, oh my God, even though we all know that it's just a guest day.
Right. But still.
That's so funny.
I know.
People getting a shagging at that time. It's the popular shag time.
It's a popular shag time, apparently. I had a friend who was due around the same time as me, and we ended up having our babies on the same day. Like, she went into labor before me, ended up having the baby, and a few hours later, I had the baby. It was Eric's best friend, which was so crazy.
Oh, what?
Yes.
I don't even think I know that.
Yeah.
With Winter?
No, with Wyatt. Was it Wyatt? Yeah.
Wyatt.
I don't know. Yes, with Wyatt. With Wyatt. It was with my first. It's so crazy. I know. Well, today we have Ann Gilligan on, and I'm so excited that she's here. She is an amazing You've been doing nursing for what, 36 years? Is that right?
Yeah. We call him the seasoned nurse. Not an old nurse, a seasoned. Yes. And I started in 1989. I could be both of your mother, probably.
My gosh.
It goes by so quick.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is just, I always think nurses are it's the greatest gift of service. It's just it is such an open-hearted, loving, amazing occupation. And it takes so much. I'm absolutely sure. But you're also a birth instructor, and then you also have the Gilligan's Guide, which I want to hear all about. We're going to talk about that today.
Me too.
You will hear about it.
And we're really excited. So let's jump right in. Taz, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So obviously, Anne, you have had many, many years of experience in your field in obstetric nursing. Were there any particular pivotal experiences in your career that led you to write the Gilligan's Guide?
Such a good question. And thank you both for having me on. I'm so honored. And I am so excited to talk about just having babies and empowering your listeners with good information. So I am an evidence-based birth instructor. I believe in evidence. And with all my experience, what's happened, Teresa, is that I noticed a change as I was doing my work over the years. And the change happened about when computers become, in our lives, occupying our time, changing the way that we sit on a daily basis, right?
Yes.
And so I recognized that it wasn't such a fun, easy job anymore. It was getting very difficult to get these babies out and to provide the care that I wanted. Whereas things, a prima gravida, first-time laboring person would come in and they'd already be dilated. The baby would already be in the pelvis. And I literally would tell them, we used to use something called Stadol, which was a really strong drug. I mean, people would hallucinate on this drug. And I would tell them, yes, it was that strong. I would tell them, okay, if you want something, I can give you the Stadol and you will probably be complete within, several hours. and you'll have a baby. And if that happens today, we come out of our room and we're like, oh my gosh, guess what just happened? So it is yes, with people that have had more than one baby, but typically that first baby has become so complicated. So I decided that I'm going to take my expertise. I'm going to create all the things that I know that can lead in that, help a person go in that direction. And I'm going to take my expertise and start teaching other people.
That's amazing.
To make a difference.
How brilliant. As you were saying that, I think we've talked a lot about our first births. And Sarah's baby had like shoulder dystocia, and she was pushing for an insane amount of time.
4 hours.
Like for 4 hours she pushed.
Yeah.
You're
at a home
amazing.
birth.
I mean, I just honor people like that. I don't know if I could have done that. And that is true with you and your friends, that first time pushing for 4 hours. How about you, Teresa? What was your first like?
Well, I also had a challenging first birth. I had a home birth transfer.
Yes,
so not dissimilar to Sarah, although my pushing stage was fast. It was 30 minutes. But I had a posterior baby, and the positioning was incredibly painful for me. The back labor meant that I had a real stop-start pattern to the labor.
Yes.
And I got to 10 centimeters dilated finally over 2 days at the house. And then all my contractions just stopped. I just had nothing. I could feel the baby's head, and then suddenly there were no more contractions left. And I ended up having to go to hospital and get Pitocin. And I pushed the baby out on my back and tore. I had a natural birth still, but it was very painful. The birth itself was not so painful, but the retained placenta experience I had when they had to pull the placenta out of me,
I remember that.
Was incredibly painful. And I know, and then obviously I learned about malposition and just what a posterior baby means for labor. And then I went about trying to make sure that my subsequent births, I had 3 births after that my baby was in an anterior position. And
good for you.
I found laboring much easier with my second and third. But then unfortunately my fourth was posterior, and I was so lazy. I didn't do any of the work to turn that fourth baby. And then I had another very challenging home birth with
very
the fourth.
challenging.
So that's why we're glad you're here.
I know.
Well, what we don't recognize, you guys, is that we're mammals, and when we have something that tells us it's not right, such as a posterior baby, or a really long pushing stage, right? And we're saying to ourselves, something just isn't right. But we're being told to lay on our back, or we're being told to, not get out of bed, or somebody has broken our water. We're not like animals who actually would go and roll onto their back and change the position of their baby, because we don't have that kind of freedom to that autonomy. So that's what I try to teach people. And you're so right that you have to, after a traumatic birth, the stories that I hear, I want to just take a moment to recognize what people go through and how they continue to go on to the next. It's really hard. So tears come to my eyes sometimes when I talk to people, because I can't imagine having gone through that. And then here they are pregnant again and anticipating this next delivery, and they're fearful. And I just hate that people have to be fearful. So good for you for empowering yourself to know things that you can do to make this next pregnancy, or made that next pregnancy and birth go better. Not everybody has those resources and that support. You must have had good support. And I'm so proud of you, because that takes a lot. And here you are having your 5th, and Sarah, you're having your
my fourth. Yes.
Your 4th, which is rare today. And I applaud you both.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful that you're doing this. But ask any question you want. I'm here to answer and to empower those out there, particularly those that have had a traumatic birth and are going into this next birth with maybe some hesitation or some fear.
Well, I thought it might be kind of interesting. So I found out I'm, right now when we're doing this podcast, I'm just about 35 weeks. And I went in for like the stress test. And then they did an ultrasound, my like last growth scan. And so of course they love to make a big deal about how huge my babies are every time because they're enormous. And, the positioning is usually exactly the same. For the first 3 babies, the positioning was the same. So it's head down, and then I'm going to stand up so you can see. And then if you're watching YouTube, so head down, back across here, butt was usually here, and then kicking would happen here. And this time it's a little different. So we're head down.
I can already tell you what position your baby's in. Can you raise your left hand though, so I can make sure that I'm seeing the right side? Yes. Okay. Yep. Got it. Yep. Got it. Okay. So I can see the shape of your belly. Yes. Yeah. So your baby is, if you look at the shape of your belly, everybody that's looking, so you can see the shape. And that's what I teach people to do is, do you see the bump over on Sarah's left side? And how, the baby is laying against that. And then do you see how it's more flat on her right side? So I teach people to look at their belly, maybe not this early, Sarah, but at 37 weeks, which we consider term, and not to freak anybody out, right? I don't do it for that reason, but just to be aware of where baby is, because I think there's that connection you have with your baby and your body in order to bring baby to a more optimal position.
And can you tell us what, like, ideally, where is that baby sitting?
Yes. And I have my baby doll here so I can show you. So with your first baby, so it's different. So with you being what we call multips, you can have a baby on the right side. Baby has the space. So the bottom of the uterus is a little bit more triangular shape with your first. And that's why it's good for the baby to be in that optimal position of left occiput anterior, left occiput transverse. So a baby should be, this is my left side, on your left side. Why? Well, we have more space on your left side. And you also, interestingly enough, have the bottom of your uterus more dextra rotated. So this baby can go through those cardinal movements of birth that we know about to get into the pelvis. They rotate at what we call the ischial spines, which are these little protrusions here that kind of poke out. And then that's when they rotate to that occiput anterior. So it's wherever the occiput, the fetal occiput is in relation to that body. That's what we refer to. Now, with multips, with somebody who's had another baby, we want baby to be either on the left or right, but then we want to encourage baby to rotate occiput anterior. And the problem with the right side is that babies then typically rotate to the posterior. Yes. Now we've got a little bit of a problem. Yes. And now we've got Teresa's discomfort, right? And we've got the alarm that's going off in our head saying, something isn't right. Something just doesn't feel right. And so I teach people
I feel it in my kidneys.
Yes.
Like back in my kidneys in the middle of, and I'll be like, in labor. It's so painful.
So what do you do when that happens? What does your body do? If you were to just let it go, where would your body lead? And where did it lead? Can you remember? Like what position?
I had to be hands and knees with my head on the birth ball with a hot, like burning hot shower on my back. And I was just rocking and rolling and roaring.
That's right.
I actually have video of you on the birth ball going, this feels amazing in the shower.
I'm like, I want to stay here forever.
I actually nurse because she said, no, you can't be in that position. And I was her doula. And I said, no, you're going to have to work with getting that baby on the monitor because this is where she needs to be right now. She needs to be leaning over. That's all she can do right now. So good for you for listening to your body.
I remember with my fourth, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I've had so many babies and, I had these beautiful, glorious water births and fast and, just gorgeous. And then I was like, oh, okay, I got this. This is my first home birth. I don't have to do any prep. I was exercising, but I didn't worry about doing any of the exercises to turn the baby. I had read, unfortunately, most babies turn anterior during labor. So I was like, oh, the baby will turn at some point during labor. And I think the baby only turned as I was pushing, as it came down into the birth canal. So the whole 4 hours, it was just in my back. My husband was putting all his energy in, with his fist into my back, trying so hard to help me, and nothing was easing the pain. And I was like, oh, I will never do this again. I'm never going to just sit around and be like, it'll be fine. The baby will turn.
I think that stat that you just reported about most babies turn is old. Yeah, there is, when I talk to other birth workers, and I've been involved in thousands of deliveries, in upwards of 10,000 deliveries. So I teach people that, why go through that? Why have that back labor when you can have a tool to actually get the baby in a better position? Because if you were in the hospital, it would have led to more interventions, right? More medications, possibly an epidural, and then maybe your oxytocin would have gone down and we would have had to use Pitocin. So it's hard. Back labor is hard. Pushing for a long time is hard. You easily could have had a C-section, Sarah, if you didn't have the provider and the team that you had. Usually it's about 3 hours. Obviously your baby was looking good on the monitor, and you did it. You did it. And I am so proud of you. Even today, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And you just have bigger babies.
I do. I have big babies, and he actually came down. I think so. What tends to now, I've noticed a trend with my births is that my body gets really excited about pushing right before I'm fully open to 10. So I'm probably 9.5. And then it's every urge inside of me, it's that push down, where you're just it almost feels good at the peak of the contraction to push. And so my cervix started to swell because the baby's head was against it. And so that
anterior lip.
Yeah. And so then the midwife had to then massage it. And the process just really changed after that. And we tried to get baby into a better position because he was just kind of coming more down in the right and not the way that we wanted. The optimal way. And then in subsequent births, it's been very similar, but I prepped my doctor. I was with Dr. Goldberg at Cedars. And so he would just put his hand up there and hold the cervix back and help baby get through. And then I could do the rest. And so I ended up only pushing for 30 minutes the two other times. Yeah.
Again,
and so he'd be like, it's not quite ready. Yes.
Right.
So we knew, and then we knew what to do.
You used your voice. You used your voice.
Yes,
you empowered yourself. So important. And you had somebody to listen.
Yes, that's so true.
I feel like that was one of the questions that you asked your new provider.
Yes.
Now that you've moved. What would you do in a situation where I have a cervical lip? How do you handle cervical lips? Which is so great. It's advocating for yourself.
Good.
So you know what the game plan is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I do with my clients is we figure out what happened, and then I give them a voice and say, this is what maybe you should put in your birth plan, or this is how you should discuss it with your birth team for sure. And it does make a difference. But a lot of people feel like they don't have a voice. And that's unfortunate. It is your birth. It is your choice. And you do have a voice. Mm-hmm. And if you can talk to somebody and figure out what happened. Very few people don't know what happened during their past birth. They don't understand it.
That's true. That's true.
Yes.
I've heard that too, where they're just I'm not really sure.
Well, I wanted to do the research because I had read all the books. Sarah and I were Ina May Gaskin obsessed. We read every book she's ever written. I watched YouTube tutorials from her. And then I was like, hang on a second. When you get to 10 centimeters dilated, your body's meant to sort of take over and you get this pushing sensation. I never had that during my first birth. And I had to research and figure out why. And then, of course, in my subsequent birth, which I will say of the 4 so far, has been my easiest and just so like peaceful. I would not even describe it as painful. The body just fully took over, and it just, and he came out, I think it was 2 sort of pushes. I really more breathed him out, and no tearing. It was so gentle and beautiful, but it was because I really wanted to investigate it so that I wasn't wrapped up in the trauma of the change in my birth plan. I just wanted to figure out, like, okay, so why did I have to transfer? Why did my contractions stop? Why did I have a retained placenta? Where was the cascade of things that happened? Where did it start? And it was really informative. So Sarah and I always say, ask questions, just find out like the pattern of what happened in your birth. And all right, with your subsequent birth, what are some actionable steps you can take to ensure that it's a smoother delivery?
So good. I'm so proud of you both. Oftentimes, so I opened up what's called the Minnesota Birth Center here, a freestanding birth center about 12 years ago.
So cool.
And we did have some transfers. And that's what happens when you go out of your element, out of your comfort zone. You have a rise of your what we call your stress hormones and your cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline. You get to the hospital and they're up here. Where's the oxytocin and your endorphins? They're down here. So then everything shuts down. And oftentimes people actually take a nap and then they wait and then it picks up again. So your body was doing just that when you transferred. And transfer is not easy. It's a very hard thing to do because that was what you had envisioned for your first birth.
Well, I'm curious because, okay, so the other day, I think it was like a week ago, I was like, oh, okay. I was feeling so many limbs in the front of my belly, right? I was like, everything was poking out front in the middle of the night. And I was really uncomfortable I was really uncomfortable. She's showing you guys on the screen, like what baby was doing, which was just like everything was forward and like hitting me. And at night I was so uncomfortable and I was like, gosh, I really need to like focus in on doing the work and making sure that I'm getting this baby into the right position because I'm not used to feeling anything in the front. So baby has a lot of room right now to move around. There's a lot of, good fluid in there. But my question would be when someone is, at this stage where I'm at right now, how can they I know that they have access to you because we're able to have you as an online resource as well. And you have this whole guide. What should they be doing if they're starting to feel like things are not in the right position and they want to get prepped? Like, what are some of the key things that you would suggest?
Thank you for asking that. And that is really the beginning of the work. At 34 weeks is when I start. I do not believe you should be concerned with the position of your baby prior to that. Yes, eat well. Yes, exercise. Do what's normal for you. But at 34 weeks, I really want this baby, if it's your first again, to be getting over to that left side. Why? Because then the baby can actually tuck its chin, get into the pelvis, and start working on that cervix, right? Ripening that cervix. So at 34 weeks, I call them lifestyle changes. So I want you to, after 30 minutes, I want you to get up from your workplace, wherever you are sitting, and I want you to walk around, particularly when that little baby's moving. So this is where my hands used to be because I didn't have a keyboard when I was pregnant with my 3, right? 32, 30, and 28 years ago. So I had no keyboard in front of me. So get up, move around, phone. Then sit back down, or the handheld devices, right? Right.
Yes.
Walking every single day is the best thing you can do for your hip flexors. 30 minutes without having anybody pulling you like a baby or a dog, right? So you want to walk by yourself if you can and rock those arms, right? And move those hips because that's those hip flexors and the firing of the gluteal muscles. The psoas, the piriformis. When you're sitting, it's important to have your knees lower than your hips. So that kind of helps you choose the device that you're sitting on. Sarah's looking at her, looking at her hips.
I looked down
knees.
immediately. I was like, wait, I feel like my hips need to go a little higher.
And why? Because now you're going to make more space in the front for the baby if you dip your knees down. I don't know if you can see, but I sit in one of these little chairs that are Norwegian kneeling chairs. Super great for pregnant people.
I need to get one of those. That is so cool.
One.
I actually should get one for Eric. He's very Norwegian.
There's lots to choose from. And so
cool.
And then doing what I call, I do yoga. So extended mountain pose often, right? Oh, getting that, especially bigger babies. Good. Because, and then I teach you how to do it. So it's not just this, it is standing up, feet shoulder width apart, shoulders back, tuck your tailbone, and then it's all about the breath. Okay. So you're going to be thinking about the breath, looking like that contraction. And now your arms go up, hands face one another. Take a big breath. Cute. And as you exhale, Sarah, reach up towards the ceiling, kind of like you're climbing a ladder. Oh, stay up there. Big breath in and exhale. And why do we do it on exhale? Because that's where that diaphragm is. And it goes up when you exhale. Once you get 3 times, open up that side body, get that baby out from underneath your ribs. Once more, and then here. I've done this with people during labor, and that's all they need to get the baby out of that asynclitic position.
Yes, I was going to say, because I always want to hang from something. I have this like crazy feeling. It's almost like a craving.
We should have ropes in our room.
Where I just want to hang. I'm like, can someone put something over something so I can hang from it? Eric was like hanging towels from the door thing in the bathroom. And like, there was all kinds of stuff where I was just like, I just want to, yes. What is that?
A sheet.
Is that a swing?
So I just tie a sheet. Here's a tool. So take a sheet right off your bed in your labor room, put 2 knots in it, throw it over a door that you can shut. And now this knot is up here and you can hang.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. What a good idea.
That's what I'm going to do.
This elongates your body to allow your sweet bigger baby to get its feet up here and actually use its feet to help it get in a better position because babies want to be in that good position. So making sure that you extend that. I've traveled to Bolivia, Haiti, Africa, and we have ropes in Bolivia where women can hang from because they're shorter statured women. Yes.
That's so cool.
Wow.
So your inclination to do that is spot on. That's what you needed to be able to expand your body to allow your baby to get in that optimal position. They want to be in that optimal.
I love that you talked about the ribs. Right here, when you said the thing about like doing the stretches for
the side body.
Yes, because right here kills sometimes. Sometimes it's so painful, and then sometimes it just goes away.
I'm sorry.
I'm like, oh, that's such a good idea is to do that.
So that's what I do starting at 34 weeks.
At 34 weeks. Okay. So I'm a ways off.
Don't worry about it before then. There's really nothing you need to do. Just be healthy and be happy, right?
Just be healthy.
We want to share that happiness. And you can work out, but don't be crazy about it. But you also want to start slowing down at 37 weeks. So you don't need to I give my people permission to just stop everything outside of walking at 37 weeks. If you do the Peloton, if you do, the Pilates, you really don't need, at that point, let's just start letting the lower uterine segment and the pelvic floor to relax and just let it open up because this is the piece that's missing. The piece that's missing is we don't have babies engaged at term anymore for first babies. It's very rare. And so that cervix isn't being ripened and that baby isn't being prepared for birth. And there's so many advantages of a baby knowing that it's going to be born. So we're missing that piece. And so that's something I want to get back to. And so if we can get the baby to the left, tuck its chin, get into the pelvis, now things are going to start kind of preparing for that birth.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with all of this. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because like I have vowed to not be in a situation that I was last time. And this time I'm like, I'm aiming for my second and third births again.
Yes.
Where it felt peaceful and easy. And
yes, you can have that, but you need to know the guide. And I'm not going to teach you the guide in this short time, but you can reach out to me for sure and I'll teach you the guide. Because if you have a baby in the posterior position, I've created an algorithm where it's like a circuit. You do one position, then you go to the next, then you go to the next. And if the baby starts out here, which I think maybe your babies is a form of posterior, that's what pushes on your sacrum. And that's why it's so painful, Teresa, is that it's pushing on that highway of nerves in the back of your sacrum.
Oh, yeah. I've even felt it.
Yes.
Some days back there, even now, I'm only 22 weeks, but I've even felt it back there and I was like, oh, baby, this is it. We're not doing this. This is not what we're going to be doing. This pregnancy, we're going to have different.
That's right. Talk to your baby. Talk to baby.
I wanted to talk to you about this like considerable rise in cesarean birth. And do you think if something like the Gilligan's Guide was like implemented into like birth education, we could see a lessening of this cesarean rate because we are hearing stories over and over about like the cascade of interventions and then suddenly it's an emergency cesarean or people being told their babies are too big and they need to have a cesarean section. I have friends who were told that their babies were too big. Their baby ended up being like 6 pounds 7 and they had a cesarean and then were told, oh no, you're not eligible for a VBAC. You know, you've already had one, we'll just continue having more cesareans. So I wanted to talk to you about that.
So we know that in 2022, we know the breakdown. So if you take a cesarean section and put it on a graph, what are the reasons for those cesarean section? And we know that, right? So we're a couple years behind. And of course, we're going to be worse off now, but not knowing stuff. But we need to keep that knowledge up. So we know that there was a labor arrest right around 34%. We know that there was non-reassuring fetal heart rates about 23%. We know there was malpresentation in around 17, 18%. Those things, the fetal heart rate, the arrest of descent, the arrest of dilatation, those all have to do with the position of the baby. So you are so right that the position of the baby is important because if you have a baby in the optimal position, you can deliver a 10-pound baby. I just delivered a 10.5-pounder the other day. She was not a big woman, right? 42% of ultrasounds in late term are inaccurate. As you just said, it's very hard to measure that. There was a new study that came out. Evidence-based birth is a great resource. And they said that in upwards of 42 to 46% of those ultrasounds that diagnose a big baby are not accurate. And they can be a pound or two off. So then, somebody schedules a C-section because they're frightened, right? And they've been told that maybe they would have a shoulder dystocia. But you know what? That OB's also frightened, right? Yeah. So I don't want to put them in a bad box because they're frightened too. They want the best for you. We all want the best outcome. But when we're told that that baby might be 10 pounds, that is a risk of shoulder dystocia. And if you've ever seen a shoulder dystocia and been involved in one like Sarah, it's a medical emergency. And so we have to recognize that. So yes, position, and I'm kind of crazy cuckoo about position because that's all I talk about, and I talk about it every day all over the world because this is happening not only in the US, but I've talked to Australian women and French and Saudi Arabia and Mexico and Canada. It's happening everywhere. And so it is having a direct effect. And so we need to recognize that and say, this is the problem. This is what we need to do about it, is we need to prevent it. How do you identify it? And you don't wait until they're pushing, right? You don't wait until she's been pushing for 5 hours with a baby that's malpositioned. You diagnose it, you identify it early. And then how can we fix it? How can we take a baby that's like this and straighten it out and tuck its chin and then get it over to the left side. Well, there are ways to do that. And movement is really important. So we need to incorporate that more. I think it's Finland just got rid of all of the labor beds and they put in these like modular sofas. They're so cool.
Whoa.
Isn't that cool?
I have to look that up.
So progressive.
I know.
Yes.
I love that.
That's amazing. Okay, there's multiple things that popped into my head when you were talking. One of which is like, it makes me think of you going all over the world and having these discussions, and like Tez saying that, if people had the Gilligan's Guide, they would have such a different outcome potentially. And it made me think of Anna Mae Gaskin back when, you remember when she was like traveling the world, and she learned about the maneuver and whatever, I don't remember what country that was.
The Gaskin maneuver.
Yeah. And then and it was called the
Which
Gaskin
we saw
maneuver.
On you, Sarah.
Yes. Where my husband yelled out like, we need to do the Gaskin maneuver, when everyone was sort of frozen as his shoulders were stuck. And
your husband said
my
it?
husband. Yes,
Oh
because
my
I had him read Ina May's books, and I had him watch the documentary on her with me, and I talked about her all the time throughout my pregnancy.
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
he learned about it. And so then in the time in which everyone was in a bit of Teresa was there, it was a bit of a like moment of fear that was coming up because we were at
like
home.
whispers and looking people like,
And my husband was like, we need to do the Gaskin maneuver. Let's turn her over. And then they all turned me over, and I got on hands and knees, and that's how we got that baby out. So, and I say we because it was definitely a group effort.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a button that we push. You have people rush in. It is a medical emergency.
I can't believe you still had the strength, Sarah, at that point.
Yes.
I had to push without a
knees.
contraction too. That last push was without one. I remember that. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow. Incredible. It's an experience that you never want to have another one. There was one time when I did a nurse-assisted delivery, and she was already in her hands and knees. Baby's head came out. It was a shoulder dystocia. The charge nurse comes in and says, get her on her back. And I said, no
way.
She needs to stay. She's already in the Gaskin maneuver. So all I did is reach in, depress the shoulder, and baby came out. But if we would have flipped on her back, right? That inability in that space would have been limited.
I prefer pushing on I've realized that hands and knees is my preferred way to push my baby out. Because I get a really intense pressure up the top by my urethra. And that's where I tore with my first baby. Yes. And I remember I just had a really brilliant midwife. And so, guys, it's so important that you have a caregiver that you feel good about. And she was really well informed, like you, 30 plus years of experience. I said, Julie, like it's feeling really tight up in that same spot. This is with my second baby. And she said, instead of in the seated position in the water, in the bath, move forward onto your hands and your knees and it will relieve the pressure. And it totally relieved the pressure. And I just breathed that little boy out. He came out so seamlessly. And so now beautiful. It's like, you learn about your body. And like Sarah said, she knows how she likes to push and she knows what happens with her cervical lip. And I know that my babies put a lot of pressure up that top part of my vagina, and I need to be in a certain position to relieve that pressure. And every time, that's my favorite part of birth, is just like to breathing the baby down as you're pushing. Breathing those babies.
How to do that.
I'll teach you.
Can you breathe an 11-pound baby out? Please tell us, Ann.
Yes, you can. And I've got a tool for that. Not everybody can go in their hands and knees. You know that. It's a provider preference. And again, I'm not putting them under the bus. This is how they've learned, is to deliver a person while they're laying flat on their back. This has been around for about 200 years. Prior to that, midwives were doing in all different positions. So I actually designed something, and I'm not putting a plug out, but it's a device that you put underneath.
We want your
because
plugs.
I couldn't find this.
Please tell us.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's called the pelvic cradle. So and I have it here. But what it is, and we're selling it all over. It's great. Actually, California, where you're located, Kaiser has been the first person or company to buy multiples. But if you look at it, it's like this. So if somebody goes flat on their back, there's a space for the sacrum to open up and to flex. And that's super important, especially with a bigger baby. And then it also tilts your pelvis back, so it gets the baby underneath that pubic bone and prevents that shoulder dystocia. Yeah. But back to what I was saying about there are all of our models that we learn on are big, like whatever electrical bodies that deliver babies are flat on your back. You can't even move them on their side or their hands. So providers don't know how to guide a baby out. Although typically you don't have to do anything with those babies because they do come out so beautifully. But it's a comfort thing for providers, and they don't think they can handle viewing the baby come out in any other way versus having that person flat on their back. And that's something that we need people to ask for.
That makes a lot of sense. In my third birth, I had to advocate really hard because there was a nurse who kept asking me, you have to get on the bed. You have to get on the bed. And this is when I was pushing or I was getting to the place where I was about to start pushing, and then I was pushing. But basically what I was doing was I was holding onto the side of the bed. My legs were really split apart. Like I had them, I would kind of, when the pushing sensation would happen, I would sort of drop into a bit of a squat, like holding the bed.
Perfect.
And then I would just have my legs kind of far apart. And I really felt like I couldn't get my legs to come back together. I was just like, they needed to be exactly where they were. And then when I would push, I would just drop, right? And there was a nurse on one side and my husband on the other who would sort of hold and make sure that I wouldn't fall backwards. But there was a nurse in the room who was very nervous, and she was like, you have to get on the bed. You can't, your baby's going to fall out and hit the floor. And I was like, then catch the baby. Like, what do you mean? Get my doctor. Like, I'm not getting on the bed. And I finally turned to her and I was just like, I'm not getting on the bed. I'm not doing that. And so I just stayed where I was and was able to get the baby out. And my doctor was totally fine with it. He just happened to not be in the room yet and was jumping in and out. But he was like, oh, she's fine where she is, once he was inside. But sometimes you do have to advocate for what your body is feeling. And, especially and it's scary in those moments. You're like, oh, am I supposed to be on the bed? Like, do I have to do that? And
yes, I'm sorry you had to argue at that time of your birth. That is not the time to have an argument about what is right and wrong. You were listening to your body. You were opening the outlet, Sarah. You were putting your knees inward and your ankles out to open the outlet for your bigger baby. You made this happen. You did it. And I cannot tell you how important that is for people to use their voice and to say what they want and to be heard. When I end my lessons, I always say it's important for people to be educated and given choices based on evidence, but the most important thing is they need to be surrounded by people who listen to them.
Yes.
Because we need to be asking our pregnant people more, what do you want? What do you feel? What can I get you? What can I do for you? And then we need to be able to answer with honesty and with confidence, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was reading something on your website, and I think this is so fascinating, and I want you to talk about it, where you talk about how you don't recommend inversions. And I would love to know your reasoning why you don't recommend that as people are sort of preparing to get baby in the optimal position. I think I understand why, but I'm curious, like, what your answer is.
So I'm a high-risk labor nurse, and I've been referring to safety as my guide for my entire career. So 60 years I am this year, and I have always thought about what is the safest method, right? And so that's why I put together my guide. All of these things are safe for a person that has preeclampsia, for a person with a higher BMI. Can you imagine a preeclamptic or a higher BMI or a person that has an unstable lie doing an inversion and bringing the baby out of the pelvis and putting the baby back in the pelvis? And there's reasoning behind creating symmetry in your lower uterine segment. And that's what I teach, right? But there are other safer ways to do it. And so I believe that, and I across the board say, do not do inversions. I wouldn't recommend it on my pregnant daughter, who's now 34 weeks. I can't imagine her going off of the couch with how uncomfortable she is and stay there and then bring herself back up again. It's not a safe position. And I think when you ask people, they'll say, I really didn't like doing it, but that's what I was told to do, so I did it. I don't even do it for breech. A lot of people, Sarah, come to me for breech babies, and I never say do an inversion. I say create space from the baby to your sternum. And when I've had really great success for that. So thinking about why it was devised, it was actually devised by Dr. Carol Phillips, who I regard as somebody that is an incredible mentor to me. She developed the sideline release and the open knee chest and the inversion. But in talking to her, she developed it for one reason. And that one reason was when you have an asynclitic baby with a intact bag of waters, so nobody has broken your waters or they haven't broken on their own. And when you have a baby that is asynclitic, which means off to one side, she devised it so you go down and then you come up again and the waters wash over the baby and creates a straighter baby. And I can see that happening, but it's within 30 seconds. You go down and you come up and you go into a kneeling position and you drop the baby down. The water washes over the baby and now you've got a straighter baby. So it was not devised as you read today in various websites to start at 20 weeks pregnancy doing inversions. I am concerned about a baby coming out of this vertex presentation and now going into another presentation.
Yes.
Okay. So this is presentation versus position. Position is where's the occiput. So I discourage it based on safety. I have never seen anything bad happen that I can directly relate to it, but I am never going to get my preeclamptic patients who are actually on the rise today in a position where her head is lower than her heart. And you don't always know when your blood pressure is up.
Because I feel like that was the consensus was inversions. Like I remember being told, like I read Spinning Babies and was like inversions. So I was doing so many inversions. So it's nice to hear this other school of thought.
Yeah, it's another school of thought and it is an opinion, right? And it is I consider an expert opinion based on how many deliveries I've been involved with. Mm-hmm. But I really believe you can create the space safely while being upright, which is how we're meant to be. And our babies are meant to lead with the heaviest part of their body, head down. So bless all of those people that are teaching other maternal positioning techniques. They're part of the world around us and they're making a difference. But my opinion is I never recommend a full inversion for those safety reasons that I talked about. Thank you for asking that.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the main reasons I asked you is because I did one and I remember I came up from it and I was like, wow, exactly what you said. Like, I really didn't like that. And then it just wouldn't leave me alone. And, you know how you have like a nagging thought. And I just kept thinking like, what if the baby's like, off to the right or off to the left right now. And I'm releasing baby up and then baby just kind of like decides to go in a completely different position that isn't what would have happened based on the way that I'm, normally doing it. And I'm somehow pushing baby in another way. And so it wouldn't like leave my mind. And so I was like, okay, I have to not do that anymore just because it made me feel uncomfortable. But yeah, I think that is so interesting and so fascinating.
And again, ask the pregnant person. You are describing exactly what I just said. You didn't feel right. You were doing it because somebody told you to. And you never want to do anything that somebody told you to if it doesn't make you feel right. And so again, so proud of you for recognizing that. And yeah, you do have a little bit of feeling like, oh, because, where is that cord? Where is that body of the baby?
Yes.
That's one of my biggest fears is
The cord. Yeah.
the cord. Like, oh my goodness, for some reason in my head when I read birth stories, and I'm sort of down this rabbit hole right now because I've decided to have a home birth again. I've been reading stories and things like the cord coming out first and getting compressed and then them having to put the cord back in. And I can't help but stumble across these horror stories. And, that's another thing is I have to just try and put up my own like energetic boundaries and not take on other people's stories. But at the same time, I also feel like I'm trying to be informative of what can happen during birth, but it can give me the wobbles. I'm like, should I not have a home birth? Like, oh, what if that happened to me? And I can imagine with I'm a 5th-time birther, but I can imagine with first-time birth as well. It's hard to advocate for yourself when you're in a situation, and if you have an OBGYN or you have a doctor or a nurse starting to panic about something, I can imagine knowing my own personality that I'm like, just do whatever you have to do. I'll take the cesarean section. If that's what you're recommending, I'll just do that.
Exactly.
So it's hard when you're in the process of it. Like these little fears can come up and sort of, wobble you.
They do wobble you. It's a great description of it. And how about when you're in transition, when your hormone level is fight or flight, and then somebody presents something to you and you're like, what? Yes. And that's when most people get an epidural, is during that transition, because they're questioning and they're not confident in their decisions. And that's when you need somebody to step in, right? And say, you're okay. Everything is fine. This is just normal, right? You're going to be fine. Teresa, you're going to be fine. You've made a decision. Yeah. You're a healthy, incredibly capable person. You have a good team. How far away are you from a hospital?
I'm far. I'm actually far. So I'm probably from the 2 good hospitals, which have like neonatal wards. One of them's a 45 to 50-minute drive. And then the other one's like a 40-minute drive, I would say.
So you have a team.
I have 2 midwives, and they're both like you, 30 plus years. Well, I think one of them has 40 years experience.
Yes.
And one of them has been my midwife with all my babies, and I'm flying her. I've relocated, and I'm flying her to be my midwife again, and she's going to come and stay for the last 2 weeks of my pregnancy and just stay until the birth. And then I have another really like prolific, celebrated midwife here on the Northern Rivers. So I have 2 amazing, capable women, but I can't help but think those things like, what if? The what ifs have started creeping in already at this point.
You're being a mama bear. That's okay. That's what you're going to be doing. It's okay to feel that way. Don't let it overtake you. The team that you bring together is the most important thing you can decide on. We know that your nurse, your labor nurse, can decide your mode of delivery, right? And so the team that you have brought together, these 2 exceptional midwives, they have intuition like no other. Like I consider myself a seasoned, I intuitively know when something is going in the wrong direction. And that is what they will be doing for you. They'll be watching all these different little signs, and they will be protecting you with their intuition. I promise you that.
I thought what you said was so smart, in that having that person say to you, it's okay, you got this, like, I understand, this is scary. And again, it goes back to that caretaker, finding that birth team. And it reminded me of in my 4th birth, because I was so exhausted. I was having really bad back labor. And I kept saying to Julie, my midwife, I was in transition, and I was like, I have a cervical lip. I know I have a cervical lip. And she was like, I don't think you have a cervical lip. I think you're fine. I was like, it's not, how come I'm not pushing? And she was like, if it would make you feel better, I can check for a cervical lip. but I can tell that it's progressing and I don't think you have a lip. And I was like, do you mind? Could you just check? I just want to rule it out. Yeah. And she was like, there's no cervical lip. You're fully dilated. And I was like, okay, thank you. I just got in my head because my last birth and labor, I did have a cervical lip. And I was like, here we go again. I've got the lip again.
Yeah, comes back.
But it's her also knowing my personality and knowing that I can get in my head. And she was so loving and beautiful. And she actually checked me to rule it out. She wasn't like, you do not have a cervical lip. Keep going. She was like,
was your teammate. That's great.
Let's just clear your mind. I don't want you to worry about this. Yeah, she was my teammate. It was really good. I wanted to ask you one last question as well. Are there any future developments with the Gilligan's Guide, like future research? Are there plans to expand its reach? Is that what you're looking for in the future?
Yes, I am very busy. I still work bedside. But what I have decided, and it's really fun, is to create an ambassador program. So I have hired a labor and delivery nurse, a PT pelvic floor specialist, and a doula. And we're meeting actually in June in the PT's hometown in Alabama. And my L&D nurse is going to start teaching classes. My doula is going to start teaching the doulas. And my PT is going to be our anatomy and physiology guru. And so I've been very controlling over my Gilligan's Guide for the last 6 years, and it's done really well. I'm busy every day, but we do need to get up beyond, and we do need to start teaching at facilities. I've taught it everywhere in the Twin Cities, essentially, and I have taught a group of people at Cedars, at Moxie Birth there in Los Angeles. I know a lot of people there, and so I'm starting to, in the more progressive states, right, teach a lot of people. And so I'm very excited about letting this go and get bigger because it will make a difference. I've got over 90% vaginal rate. I know that it works. I am never in the OR with my patients. I'm always getting these babies out because I'm always paying attention to where that baby is and helping her get the baby in a more optimal position. And that is the key. And so by teaching people that maybe don't have a doula or don't have a labor and delivery nurse that is supportive of physiological birth, you can create that empowerment within the support person and the pregnant person. And that is totally doable. And so that's where we need to be right now, is teaching people how to ask questions.
Where can our listeners find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Gilligan's Guide. I do little drawings. I wanted to mention my last, because you just talked about your midwives. And I want you to read it, Teresa, because I gave total, I'm honored to be in her presence because this patient was saying she was scared. But she said, it's okay. You can be scared, but you can be strong at the same time. She kept telling her. And it went, tears are streaming down her face. And she's like, okay, I can be strong. I can be strong and fearful at the same time. And she went on to be, super strong and push this baby out direct OP. But it is so important to have that support team honor those fears and honor those. But I do little stories on my Instagram and about births and just teaching people how to recognize that little baby and where he or she is.
Amazing. Well, everybody check out Gilligan's Guide. Check out Ann's incredible Instagram. You can also find her website and then book consultation. People can book a consultation with you as well.
Yes.
Isn't that true?
I get a lot of people via Zoom. Thankfully for Zoom, I can see people.
Ann, you guys just witnessed how I just stood up on, this very grainy video and she was able to tell you what I was about to tell you, which was exactly the position that I found out my baby was in. So I think that is just so cool.
That is a skill.
It's a major skill. And then I have to say that Anne is also the sister to one of my dear friends, longtime friends, Claire Vivier, which is why I even learned about Anne to begin with and got to meet her in person. And so if you guys are also big fans of Claire, now you see that there are these two powerful, beautiful, amazing, wonderful women. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have this time with you and to learn more. And I love that with every birth, you learn more about yourself and you learn more about doing it and you learn more just about the process. And so, thank you so much for doing this with us today. And you guys check out Anne's Instagram, Gilligan's Guide, and we will be reporting all of the things that we're doing over the next few weeks as we prepare for birth as well. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you back so at you much, with beautiful Anne. Women. You're both so beautiful and glowing, and I wish you the best for your birth. And call me if you need me.
Oh, we will for sure.
We will.
No, really, I'm serious.
Yeah, no, we will. I'll be emailing you.
Thanks,
you guys can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. Bye.